Welcome to Topics. My guest today is a Burlington boy made good, Captain Mark Horgan, United States Navy, retired. Welcome to the program, Mike.
Thanks, Phil.
Thank you for joining us. Mark is a 1967 graduate of Burlington High School.
1971.
1971 graduate of the United States Naval Academy, and also a graduate of Pepperdine Law. Our topic today is the activity Epic Fury in Iran, but we want to start out with, let's start with your credentials in terms of being involved in these types of things over your career. I know you served in the fleet initially, but then you were involved in NCIS, JAG officer, etc. Give us a litany of where you've been.
Sure. Yeah, after graduation, I was the gunnery and missile officer on a destroyer escort out of Long Beach, California. So I spent 2 years in the fleet.
Was that the Downs?
Yeah, it was Downs, and it was. I became a surface warfare officer, and at the same time, I was applying to law schools and to the Navy program. So I was one of the first cadre of lawyers that was sent out under the funded legal education program, and I graduated from Pepperdine in '76. And after a first tour, get your feet wet type of tour, I did about 8 or 9 years of civil litigation, and then they sent me out to do.
Would that be admiralty law, civil litigation?
Admiralty aviation, and then general litigation wherever the Navy had been sued throughout the country. Mm-hmm. But anyway, in 1988, when I had orders to comm sublant, the 3-star commander of the submarine force for the Atlantic Fleet, they sent me to the Naval War College, Naval Justice School, put on a combined program to teach international and operational law to lawyers that were going into counseling commanders in that specialty. So
did you end up in Ukraine after that, or later on?
Well, later on, I did a tour with the Naval Investigative Service, which has since become NCIS. I was the commander for Europe and Southwest Asia. And when I became the fleet lawyer for the Pacific Fleet, I was sent twice to Ukraine as the head of teaching teams. And the second time was in Sevastopol, Crimea, where we taught senior naval and marine officers of their armed forces what the United States view of international law and operational law was, so they knew what to expect from us when we encountered each other.
Right.
So I spent 2 weeks doing that.
Right. So you were also you're reporting to the 4-star in the Pacific Fleet. So you're the chief JAG officer in the Pacific Fleet.
Yeah, but let me say something, because I don't think a lot of people understand how the armed forces is organized right now. There is. The fleet commander is responsible for everybody who's not deployed. But if you're deployed to an operational fleet, you're a warfighter, you go off to PACOM, which is also a 4-star and has always been a Navy. Nimitz was double-hatted. He had both of those jobs.
Right.
So my boss at PAC Fleet was responsible for training, administration, maintenance, and all that kind of stuff. Of the 2/3 of the force that were not deployed. But when they deployed to 7th Fleet to Asia, they were under PACOM, and so was the Army, and so was the Air Force, and so were the Marines.
Okay.
So
Joint Operation, Joint Command?
Right. And the way that's relevant to our topic today is that I wasn't actively providing counsel on operational issues in the fleet job, but I was in the submarine job.
I see. Okay, now you were a prosecuting officer during this period of time for which portion, PACOM or the other side? You were like Jethro, right, for NCIS?
Yeah, NCIS in Europe was interesting. They civilianized the job about halfway through it. They let the few officers go back to the fleet that were assigned. But I was the operational commander for Europe, Southwest Asia, as I mentioned, and specifically my job was to liaise with all of the European, Mediterranean police forces to make sure that the fleet was secure whenever it made a port call. And as part of that, I was also the counterintelligence officer for the 6th Fleet.
Right. Now you've had a couple of 3 deployments. Let's just stop for a second. I know you were in Maui for a while. You were in London for a while. You were in Ukraine for a while. You were where else were you? You went to school at Pepperdine, overlooking Malibu Beach.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been several tough deployments.
Did I tell you I enjoyed the Navy? It was, yeah. Actually, my favorite tour was Virginia Beach. That's when my son was born, and that's where I had the submarine job in Norfolk.
Subplane,
Yeah.
All right, so let's get down to hard tacks here. You're a legal expert as far as the Navy is concerned. What is the legal grounds for Epic Fury? Now, some people say, if you read in the liberal press, of course, we have no authority to go to war. Others say that this is a long time coming. For 47 years, that it's been death to America, and we should have taken care of these people long ago. Where are we in that spectrum?
Well, one thing I want to make clear is that the first, our allies all said that this is contrary to international law, and therefore they were washing their hands of the whole thing initially. And I'd like to make it clear that international law, because we're a sovereign nation, is only what we agree to. Mm-hmm. So treaties, agreements between with other countries and those kinds of things we can be held to, but we're not held to anything that we haven't accepted. Right? So when you say something is contrary to international law, what does that really mean? Now, the arguments that I've heard are that we violated the right to self-defense under the UN Charter, to which we are a signatory. But that's a pretty simplistic way of looking at it. You have a right to defend yourself against an imminent threat. And the argument is that there was no imminent threat coming from Iran. You could argue just as strongly, and probably more strongly on the counter part, that allowing them to have nuclear weapons and the means of delivering nuclear weapons is a threat in itself. And we have no way of knowing when they perfect those weapons, or which they said that they wanted to do.
Well, it's been death to America for 47 years. That's kind of an imminent threat. Huh?
Well, that's the second argument. I think that's even a stronger argument. And the UN Charter, Article 2, says that you will not engage other countries in armed conflict. Mm-hmm. When they took over our embassy in 1979, that was an act of war. When they blew up our Marine barracks in Beirut and killing 300 Marines, that was an act of war. The IEDs that they provided in Iraq and Afghanistan, those were acts of war. There are 170 proxy attacks, terrorist attacks against the United States.
Well, let's just identify those proxies before you go on. Al-Aqsa, Muslim Brotherhood, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis. These are all essentially being supported by Iran. So cutting off the head of the snake was not a bad idea.
Well, it's political judgment. It seems that President Trump is the only one who wanted to take it on. You could argue that things have changed now and it needed to be taken on. Obama tried to reach an agreement with them and was unsuccessful. With money. Well, whatever it takes to get people to agree not to be a threat. And that didn't work, so force was kind of inevitable. But the point is that they resorted to force first. They took our embassy, which is an act of war, and they've they followed up on their death to America threat ever since.
Now, Hillary Clinton, if elected president, said that she would attack. Bush, GW second said it. Clinton said it. Obama said it. Biden said it. All of them said that it was unacceptable for them nuclear weapons.
And they wouldn't have said it if it hadn't been consistent with their understanding of law.
Right. Now, we developed a nuclear weapon in the 40s in 4 years. The Iranians had been working on it for 25 years. The only thing that stopped them was Stuxnet, as you recall, when the one of those things.
Centrifuges.
Centrifuges were, I thought that was a great, in any event, that stopped them. We've had a couple of attacks. The Israelis had an attack, etc.
Well, you know what should have stopped them is, and it goes back to international law as well, is they signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement in 1968. Iran signed it. Now, it's changed the government, but there's still a signatory to it. They are the only country in the world that have enriched uranium consistent with weapons-grade needs. That doesn't also have a nuclear weapon. So they're in violation of the undertaking in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Agreement. There's no question about that.
Right. And it's been reported, and who knows what sources that we have to rely on, but it's been reported that they're up to 25% of weaponized uranium at this point.
60% is what I've heard.
60,
and
okay.
That's way above any civilian need.
But more importantly, Trump has said on a number of occasions that they were building ICBMs or long-range missiles, which the Europeans have denied and said, no, that's not the case, et cetera, et cetera. What recently happened in Diego Garcia that proved Trump to be right?
Well, we found out in the 2 missiles that were launched at Diego Garcia that they had not only ICBMs, which I think we knew, but of a range of about 1,000 miles more than we thought.
Right.
So we thought they had 1,400 mile range, which would have brought the Mediterranean Sea into play. But now all of the European capitals are exposed as well.
Right.
So and if they can do that, the next step is to get something that could reach the eastern seaboard of the United States.
Now, what is their strategy? Is their strategy the same as the North Koreans? If I get a nuclear weapon, I'm less likely to be a target, and I'm more able to cause grief around the region.
I think it's a strategy in that you can't touch them in the way that you would, North Korea or Iran. But Iran's much more dangerous. North Korea brandishes their nuclear weapons as a way of keeping South Korea and the United States of crossing the border and invading the North.
Right.
Iran...
Which there is no likelihood that we're interested in doing that. Yeah. They can't even put the lights on there. Why would we invade them?
Right, and they don't have the means of delivering it to the west coast of the United States. Right. Iran wants to defeat Israel, first of all, us, second of all, and threaten anybody who gets in their way. And that's what's at stake here. Right.
Now, and you mentioned the Israelis. It's been reported, just somebody who came out of DNI, Ford, I think was his name, said that the problem wasn't imminent and that Netanyahu hauled Trump into this aggression. How would you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I think it's very clear that Israel is entitled to do whatever they need to do in terms of the self-defense imminent risk issue. I mean, they're the closest, much closer than we are to Iran, and they're in a position to be able to take them out. The question of whether or not, and as most people are aware, although we don't have a mutual self-defense treaty with Israel, Israel is probably as close an ally as we have in the world. Right. So we're not going to do anything except in consultation with them. Right. So I think it's 2 independent issues. Israel's going to go. They're going to do what they're going to do.
Which they had previously on their own.
Given the imminence of them having a nuclear weapon, and after they've killed 30,000 of their own people, and that's a conservative estimate.
In the last month.
Right. It's a conservative estimate. Right. What are we supposed to do?
Right. And over the course of history here, again, with their proxies, they've supported at least 6 different attempts to subvert the Israelis. I mean, with Hezbollah or Hamas, they've broken the peace treaty six different times. So you would think that it would be prudent for the Israelis to be on guard.
Yeah. And I have no quarrel legally with anything that the Israelis have done. And the other issue that the Israeli involvement raises is the quality of Israel's intelligence. Mm-hmm. And what they have their finger on in terms of on-the-ground intelligence in Iran is really stunning. And we have our own intelligence assets that put together give us a real good idea of what's going on. The fact that it hasn't been announced is understandable. You know, people treat the administration like if they haven't told the media, then they haven't thought about the issue.
Right.
And that is really
right. Well, how would you characterize the progress so far? I mean, it's in my view, as an amateur kind of war studier, I guess that's the word. I wouldn't say war scholar, but somebody who's followed the war since the WW1. I would say that this is really kind of a stunning turn of events in terms of how quickly a nation of like 27 million with a strong supposed military has been kind of brought to heel.
Well, I think we saw how effective the air war could be in this past summer when they took out the Fodbro installation, where we thought that all of their enriched uranium was. So it doesn't really surprise me. What surprises me is the degree to which everything works. You know, if you go back to World War II, strategic bombing was basically carpet bombing.
Carpet bombing, sure.
Because we couldn't hit what we were aiming at, so we dropped, you know, we flew thousands of planes, dropping thousands of tons of bombs to try to take out installations and hope we did.
Strategic installations.
The Brits were so concerned about it that they flew at night and let the bombs go where they would.
Right. That's an important point. Americans were the first ones to do daylight bombings at the
right.
WW2.
But now the accuracy of these weapons is really incredible. Iran is motivated to report every civilian casualty they have, and apparently a girls' school that was in proximity to one of their bases was struck,
right.
and we really regret that. It's only a war crime if we intended to hit the school.
Right. Which hasn't been proven yet. The film I saw was a missile that was almost vertical in attack, and supposedly it was, what's that one we launched from the submarines?
Tomahawks.
Tomahawks, which travel at 300 feet above the ground. But be that as it may, let's take responsibility, and it was our bomb.
If it was our bomb, it's a violation of crime if we intended to hit the girls' school. The girls' school was in very close proximity, if not actually on the base. Right. We regret having done that. But the point that I was trying to make is that I have not heard of any other collateral damage, which is really, given the level of destruction that we've had of their key industries and military bases, is really remarkable.
Right. Well, now what about the Iranians spent billions of dollars preparing for, great Satan attack from the United States. They spent billions of dollars in Chinese and Russian defense weapons. Do you think they regret that? And what would the rest of the world think about purchasing those weapons from those countries?
Well,
defensive weapons, excuse me.
You both have to have the weapons and the ability to operate them at their peak capacity. So I would not say that Chinese weapons don't work, but the Chinese have to be wondering about the efficacy of these weapons. And we thought Russia was a force to be reckoned with too, until they couldn't take Ukraine.
Right.
So I've been asked from time to time, what the implications are for China and Taiwan.
Across the straits.
Across the straits. Right. And, our industrial capacity makes it difficult for us to regenerate the stockpiles of munitions that we've already expended. So there is that. How much do we have left? Right. I think we've got quite a bit left, but not as much as we'd like to have as we ramp up production. But the Chinese have to be concerned about the performance of our weapons versus their weapons.
Right.
You know, and especially with Russia as an example of what not to do.
Right, and Russia, fully engaged, doesn't have enough time or money or weapons at this point to be engaged in any other operation.
Yeah, that's an intractable conflict.
Yeah.
You know, and I just going back to this Ukraine thing, because I've spent about a month in Ukraine on each occasion. I was unaware when I made the first trip in 1996 that after Israel, Ukraine was the number 2 military-supported country in the world by the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So we...
Well, because they were on the front lines of the Soviet Union and were part of the breakup. So although they're not in NATO, they're not part of the Soviet Union, they're right in the middle.
Right, but I had no idea that they were so important to us that we would spend the money that we were, you know. So I'm glad the administration isn't washing the hands of Ukraine, because you know, now's the time that they really need the support.
Right.
But I was treated very well over there.
Okay.
You know.
Now let's talk about geopolitical issues. Of course, most of my friends are liberal Democrats, although if I still have them. But it would seem to me that Trump is a geopolitical genius in terms of strategy. The operation in Venezuela was as clean a military operation as we've ever done, except when we took out Noriega and arrested him. The Greenland brouhaha resulted in us having any basis we want in Greenland. Cuba is on the verge of collapse. Now the Iranians are, you know, they barely have anything left to shoot at us. And all of this boils down to is we now control about 30 to 40% of the world's oil supply.
Yeah, well, and that doesn't count what we have, because we're the biggest producer in the in the world.
Right.
You know, Venezuela is a little bit of an odd case. You know, great success, but I think we knew the tea leaves indicate that we probably were aware that there were people that we could work with in Venezuela if we got rid of the guy that had been indicted, Maduro.
Sure. Yeah.
So we took Maduro out. We didn't have to use 30,000 troops the way we did in Noriega's case.
Right, right. 5 Apache helicopters, right?
Right. So it's, you know, we made it look too easy, because it's not going to be easy in Iran. Mm-hmm. You know, hopefully a new Middle East will come of this. But what if it doesn't? What if it does take, you know, an invasion? I do not believe this administration is going to
Well, let's go to that. Do you anticipate, Trump has said no, but do you anticipate the necessity for boots on the ground? And would the American public, which supports the attack on Iran but does not support boots on the ground?
Yeah, I don't think, given this administration's track record, that we're going to involve an invasion. Iran is a big country.
Right, 27 million.
Yeah, and there are other ways of doing this. You know, we were humbled in Vietnam. Vietnam is now an ally of ours, not a military ally, but an economic ally. Right. So, you know, you got to take the long picture of this. I don't think that the Trump administration is prepared to undertake an invasion of Iran. What they're going to threaten, I think, is they've got 2 amphibious ready groups. One that's on the scene. The other one, I think, with the Boxer arrives on Friday. Each one of them is a reinforced Marine battalion with an air wing and everything they need, which is why there are 2,500 Marines for each one of them. Usually a battalion is only 1,200 or so. Right. I think Carg Island is in play. Right. And you know, hopefully it'll force the Iranians to the table, and we can get the oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz before we need either one of them. But they've got the capability of taking Carg Island, particularly now that they've destroyed the military installations on the island. Right,
and also destroyed the Navy. They have nothing left for air power. They have nothing left for sea power. 2 questions left. Let's talk about our allies, of course, which we're nowhere to be seen until it looked like we were going to have no problem taking out their military. Now suddenly we can expect that they'll be helping to patrol the Strait of Hormuz.
I hope. You know, it's an international issue. They need the oil more than we do, that's for sure.
Right.
China needs the oil, but I think China and India are getting their tankers through.
Yeah, well, Japan needs it, so does the Indians.
Well, it's literally the lifeblood of the economies, right?
Right. French and the British, of course, won't jump in until the foxhole is safe.
Yeah, you know, I mean, credit. It was a different time, but Britain was with us when we went into Afghanistan. You know, they took several hundred casualties, as did we. So I don't want to diss them. The problem that this really highlights, I think, is the capacity of these European countries to defend themselves, let alone to engage in the kind
because
of
they've
warfare that we do.
allowed us to fund NATO all this time, carry that burden, 20%, and they've spent their money in other places. Now they find that they don't have as much ammunition.
I think they took the peace dividend literally. You know?
Literally, right.
And the question is, and they've said they've reversed it, but they've allocated all of their funds to other resources, which you're going to have to take back now, and that's the political problem.
But they have been forced now to step up for the Ukraine. Trump's forced them to do that at this point, right? They're fundamentally helping out the Ukrainians as much or more than we are.
I think that's correct. You know, I mean, Denmark, for example, stripped their Air Force of F-16s and sent them all to
All right, one last question, and I know this is one close to your heart. Asymmetric warfare. We've talked about it, read about it in science fiction all these years about drones and, you know, drone swarms, etc. And now it's on the scene. I mean, everybody's using them. The Iranians are reported to be using drone seacraft. They've been sending drone swarms, apparently bought from the North Koreans. How have we responded to that in terms of our own offensive capabilities as well as our defensive capabilities?
Well, directed energy weapons have been on the brink of deployment for some years now, and I think that's going to be the situation. We can shoot down these drones. The problem is that they cost 5 figures, and you know the weapons that we use to destroy them are 7 figures.
Right. And
it's not long until we run out of $1 million missiles before.
To shoot down a $10,000 drone.
Exactly. But if you could deploy a laser, which they're on the verge of doing, you can, you know, there's no limit to the drones you can take out.
Right. But at this point, in terms of defending against the Iranian attacks, defensive attacks, I guess we've suffered just 3 aircraft lost, and that was 4. 3 of them were shot down by our own equipment from Kuwait, I believe, or was it Dubai? And then 1 was shot down with an errant missile the other day.
Yeah, well, actually, three fighters went down to friendly fire. The pilots all got out, and we lost 6 more personnel in a collision between 2 tankers.
2 tankers, KC-135.
Yeah, they must have been flying at night. I don't have the details on that.
Great. So, do you anticipate this thing being over in a short period of time?
It's hard to tell. I think the kinetic part of it will be over in a short period of time. The rest of it's up to Iran, which, you know, we've tried diplomacy with them before. It hasn't always worked out. Again, at some point we're going to stop bombing. The question is whether we have any kind of a regime leadership that's going to cooperate.
Step in, Reza Pahlavi, perhaps.
We'll see.
Okay, unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'd like to thank my guest, Captain Mark Horgan, graduate Burlington, 1967.
The old days, yeah.
The old days. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for joining us.
A pleasure, Phil. Thank you.